your organisational changes come in from this week, the 18th of June. How hard has it been to get to this point where your changes are really starting to happen?
Well, it's always a difficult time when you announce such radical changes to ensure that people are kept abreast of all the information, that they're listened to properly, and that you try and take account of their views in any revised proposals. And that's what we've just been doing. So the first few months we've been listening, talking and explaining why the changes are necessary, what they are and how it's going to affect people. But now we've done the consultation, we're starting to do the implementation. Actually, it starts now. This is the hard bit, and it will take a number of years to see this fully implemented, bedded in, and start to delivering some results. So it's an exciting point. It's the beginning of the real journey of change.
Do you think that people do know what the changes are? Because you said you've been talking to people about those changes. I've been talking to unions who say they just don't feel like you're communicating well enough. They don't know what's going on. They keep asking and they're not finding out the answers.
Well, I'm surprised. So before I even talked to staff, I met with the unions and I told them what the plans were. Before I went public with the detail of the plans, I met with the trade unions and explained what they were. And since then, we've had a variety of meetings at different levels, and that has been part of the overall consultation. And they have, in some instances, submitted proposals, which are part of our thinking, and in others, they haven't. In addition to that, we've been in negotiation with the unions around a whole series of things about pay and conditions for staff. So I think the dialogue is ongoing. I'm not surprised that some people sometimes say they don't know enough about it, because that's not unusual. But I'm not sure that that accusation that we haven't been talking to the trade unions is correct.
So you think that you've been clearly explaining the changes as you go along?
Absolutely. I've done huge numbers of meetings. I've met with thousands of staff. I've been out to see all parts of the organisation, and I've been talking to stakeholders and to islanders about those changes. So I think it's probably the most comprehensive consultation we've done around a reorganisation of the states, and we've done it as transparently as we possibly could.
Last week we heard that the number of top jobs is going down by 26. What's happened to those 26 jobs? What happened to those people? Are they out of a job? Has that all been decided?
So what happens is we've now got a structure which shows 26 fewer posts. Some of those posts weren't filled, some were filled, and we have interviewed those in the last sort of month, where we're going to make some changes. Some people will go down a level, or maybe even two. Some people are leaving the States, and some people are retiring. So there's a mixture of how people are responding and reacting to the changes that we've made in terms of actual jobs and positions.
So some of those people have been made redundant?
Well, some people have retired. Some people will potentially be made redundant in terms of voluntary redundancy. Those negotiations are ongoing, and we're involved in that at the moment.
Okay, so you say some people are leaving the States.
Yep.
We presume that will be by redundancy at some point, but you haven't decided.
Well, some people will leave of their own volition. So I know, for example, in some parts of the organisation, people have just gone and got another job. So it's not always about redundancy. What it is, though, is that when people leave, we're not necessarily replacing them. So we do reduce costs and headcount.
Do you think that we have enough people in the island to fill these top jobs? Do you think we have enough talent here in Jersey?
We have a lot of talent, and indeed the first 8 jobs that I have filled have all come from people who are currently here on the island. So it's not as if this is a takeover from the UK, as has been suggested, or by other civil servants. But we do have a talent deficit. We've not invested in staff over a long period of time. We've not career planned people to take over roles to provide tomorrow's leaders. And we've certainly not undertaken a proper assessment of skills and capability to do jobs. The point I would make is where we need to make radical changes, we've got to bring the best in. Why is that? Because we in Jersey deserve the best. And if that means that we've got people on island, fine. But if we haven't, and we need to think about a short to medium term solution, which means we advertise the job externally and go through a process for that, then that's appropriate. Because if we were that good and we had all the right people here, we wouldn't have the concerns that have been raised by islanders, by stakeholders, by states members about the quality of the public services.
You say it's not a UK takeover. A lot of the people we've had, interim appointments announced this week that are from the UK, and some people have raised questions about some of those appointments. Why are you bringing so many people in?
Because we've got to have continuity for business as usual. So some people are leaving, and we're going through a longer-term recruitment process. That recruitment is open, transparent, and overseen by the Jersey Appointments Commission. That takes time. Some people might be on 3, 6, even 12 months' notice if they're the right people. So we've got to be able to, through that interim period, take on interim staff. And that's exactly what the title says. We've made some announcements this week because we've also got to do some reappraisal, particularly in the health department, about our efficiencies and our effectiveness. To do that, we need some proper skills that are appropriate, which we don't have on island. I think once we've done that, we will be out for jobs, for permanent, and hopefully that there will be people that will come forward who have a connection with Jersey.
You say that we're going to save £1 million by making changes. Do you have any concrete evidence that that money is being saved?
So for the top tier, I'm only just talking about those 26 jobs. That's the £1 million. We'll be taking more money out of the cost base as we go through the exercise. So this is the first bit of a much bigger change programme that we're going through. Yes, we'll be able to cost that, and yes, we'll be able to show where those reductions have been made.
Some people are questioning how 26 top jobs makes £1 million worth of savings and not more.
Well, it's because, unfortunately, we also have to take account of a whole series of other costs, like people who might stay in the organisation be on pay protection. We might have to pay some redundancy. There may be a retirement cost. So when you net it all off, that's what the savings will be. However, that is only just for the top tier. Let's be clear, there will be much more dramatic savings once we have completed the full exercise. And that will take between 6 and 9 months.
There is going to be a huge organisational restructure right down the system, as you have said. It must, staff are very concerned about whether they're going to keep their jobs, having to reapply. They know that they're going to have to reapply, some of them, for their jobs. Is that really creating a workforce that is effective when they're living in that fear and uncertainty? Change
is never easy, and I don't expect anybody to have to go through something that I wouldn't have done or haven't been through myself. So let's be clear. Some people will not be affected, the vast majority, but they may be moved. Others will be challenged around the changes that we're going to make in managerial spans of control, levels and numbers of managers. So there will need to be some competency and some testing about people's skills and capability and experience. In other areas, we're going to invest very heavily, and I think that's been a gap. We haven't done enough to support staff over the last period, and that's a key priority for me, to prioritise how we spend money to support people to do their jobs well. And that, I think, is where you'll see the benefit for the majority of people.
You've talked throughout this interview and before about being transparent and being clear about what your plans are. And we are facing a time as the media where we're having more pushbacks for interviews across the board than we've ever had before. Do you think that if the media aren't, the service as a whole aren't being responsive to the media, then that is not being transparent to the people of Jersey too?
Well, I personally don't know about all these pushbacks.
We announced those, those changes were announced on Friday. We're only sitting down to speak to you today, Wednesday, 4 days on.
So I have been fairly open and clear about any announcements that have been made, and also I've announced it first to staff, which is what we never used to do, and to states members. We've been through a period of adjustment with the new Council of Ministers coming in and the appointments. Last week we spent a lot of time dealing with all of those issues about ensuring we had a proper government and the new Chief Minister was bedded in. If you add to that, I've been involved in interviews for the last 3 or 4 days, and we have had a whole host of meetings. So my diary is already full till September, from 8 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night and more. So what I've tried to do is wherever I can, I will make time available to talk to the media. Absolutely happy and clear about that. But we've also got to do things properly, talking to staff, talking to stakeholders, talking to ministers and talking to assembly members. That's also our priority. So we've been doing that throughout the last few days once we did the announcement, and that I don't apologise for.
So you think that you're making time to speak to all those people should the media not be included?
Of course they are, and that's why I'm doing a whole series of media interviews, and lots of people make requests, and we meet that. So there is no attempt to exclude the media in any shape or form. However, what we don't do is we don't just go to the media first. We talk to the people that need to know first. That's our staff, that's the Assembly, that's ministers, and that's our stakeholders and users as well.
We had a report this week out released by Freedom of Information Request about bullying in the States, and we found levels there significant and requires attention, people not wanting to report it for fear of losing their job. This report came out before you were in post. What changes are you seeing, and what changes are you going to make to eradicate bullying in the States?
So this is part of a recommendation that came out of the Care Inquiry as well, where they found that there was a culture of bullying and intimidation within social workers, but it's not just confined to that. And I think that's symptomatic of the problem that we've got here, which is we're not a particularly staff-orientated and supporting of staff in the States. So it makes depressing reading, but it's not something that is unusual in large organisations, and we have to deal with it. So what we've started to do is the report was commissioned. It's made a number of recommendations which we're on with, a whole host of things we're already doing around whistleblowing, making sure people can raise concerns, dealing with those concerns quickly. And if you add this to the staff survey that we've also done, which highlights that there is a need to work with staff and do much more to invest in staff, these are the baselines on which we've got to improve from. So for me, it makes very salutary reading, but it's an important point whereby we can start to understand what we've got to do, and we can then take the evidence to play back to staff and to stakeholders about what and how we're making improvements. So it's a big issue, it's of concern, but we're on with it, and it's also a very useful benchmark for where we've got to improve from.
So that whistleblowing hotline was recommended. Is one going to be in place?
That's being put in place alongside a whole host of recommendations. We've accepted all the recommendations, so I've got no worries about the report, and I'm glad it's out there because it exposes some bad behaviour and bad activity.
When will you be satisfied that you've done a good job?
This is a long-term project to make the changes that are needed. This is 3 to 5 years, and I suspect in 5 years' time, when we look back, that will be the real point where you judge me. When I've been involved in these sorts of things before, it has taken a long time to be able to deal with entrenched issues, whether it's behaviours, performance, management, and also morale. I'm confident that we'll do it. You'll start to see some improvements over the next 12 months, 3 years, 5 years, and we'll report on it, and we'll tell people what we're doing, and we'll also be very transparent and tell staff what we're doing. So I'm confident it can be done, but it will take time.
And what would your message to staff be during that time? Because for a lot of them, they're going to be quite unsettled and nervous about the changes ahead. What would you say to them?
Well, I want to try and ensure that we do the organisational changes within the next 6 to 9 months. So that gives some certainty to colleagues to move forward. Then I'm, in parallel with that, starting to invest in staff. So we're going to hopefully announce soon a whole programme around culture and behaviours and leadership qualities and skills that we want to empower staff to be able to display and deal with in terms of the workplace. So this isn't something that is sequential. It will happen in parallel. And I hope that after we've done the organisational changes, people will start to settle down, see the benefits of a more focused, better and more respected public service. And therefore we start to become an employer of choice, where people want to come here, where they want to work here, and they feel proud to be here. So I'm confident in the next couple of years you'll see results in staff surveys start to go up.
Do you have a number of staff that you want to get down to?
I don't have a fixed number because it doesn't work like that. We have about 6,700 positions here. That feels quite a lot. I think we can make some reductions in that over a period of time. But we also have an 11% vacancy factor. Why? Why do we need to keep 11% of jobs unfilled? Are they essential? Are they needed? Or are they just there to balance the budget? So we've got to look at all of these factors before we decide what the final number is.
Okay, Charlie Park, I'm sure we'll be speaking a lot over the next few years. Thank you very much.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.